You are listening to Nifty Conversations. Our guest is Melissa, and we get into it covering a range of topics, including the impact of the coronavirus on our health, family, Brexit, and forward planning. So, you wanted to talk about what's going to happen, the economic impact.
I was saying that in speaking to some of my friends yesterday via Zoom, as you do, one of my friends works in the financial sector in Singapore. And obviously, they've had a very different response. It seems like a much more organized response to coronavirus. And she was saying she doesn't think that any self-respecting organization is going to lay off people this year because it's going to have a big impact financially, we know, but it needs to be managed. And now is not the time to be laying off people. Right now, we need to be looking after people, making sure that they're taken care of. I think health needs to come before the economy, but eventually the economic impact will be felt. And thinking into early 2021 is when we're going to start seeing companies really looking at the workforce and starting to think about either restructuring how they work, because actually what we see is actually, do we need to be traveling every day? Not necessarily. You've got the environmental impacts, which are positive, but at the same time, there are companies that are going to have to lay off workers because of the financial impact of coronavirus and not having money to pay people. Obviously, the government is putting in a number of policies now to help people, to help contractors, to help the self-employed, and also obviously people in the travel industry, where we're seeing organizations talking about making people stay at home and not paying them for long periods of time because people can't travel, they can't fly. But obviously the government is going to step in and pay 80% of those people's salary, which is great. But longer term, how long can they keep that up for? And what's the financial impact going to be for the rest of us? In terms of taxes, the government's going to have to look at their policies in order to recoup all the money that they're going to pay out this year.
And not to mention, on top of that, is what's going to happen with Brexit. Is at this time, at this stage, the government needs to think about is Brexit something that they need to delay because of the coronavirus, or is it something that they will still continue with? And in that environment, how are they going to manage the balance between the impact of the coronavirus economically, and also trying to negotiate deals with other countries, especially countries like China. I wonder whether there's going to be a fallback from China because of coronavirus as well.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I agree. And I was having, again, the same discussion yesterday, and I absolutely, personally, do not think that we should be trying to Brexit at the end of the year. I think unless the government is absolutely suicidal, they need to extend the transition period again. There is no point in us remaining steadfast to Brexiting at the end of the year when you've got coronavirus, which we know is going to have a massive economic impact, and then to take us out of the EU. I think it would be a complete and utter disaster. But obviously we're seeing the impacts of this not engaging with EU. I think I was reading something about there is an agreement between EU countries to purchase ventilators together. And somehow we in Britain haven't signed up to that. And what was the reason for that? So they're saying that they missed the email. How do you miss an email? You had the opportunity to participate in something that would help the people in your country by being able to buy ventilators for a cheaper price. You're all coming together to buy those ventilators, but is it because we are supposedly Brexiting that you don't want to engage in those sorts of conversations? But actually it doesn't make sense. And for me, it's you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Actually, you start to see the benefits of being in the EU. When situations like there is strength in the numbers, there is strength in sharing knowledge, in sharing expertise.
It's pulling together all those resources.
Pulling together all of those resources. And to me, it just reinforces the fact that, I know, to be fair, I was never a Brexiteer, but so I am biased, but I really do think that we should we shouldn't be Brexiting. I think they need to extend the transition period. Now we've got Keir Starmer,
Mm.
who is now the leader of the Labour Party. So let's see how much pressure and see if there is going to be a
I didn't
change
even
and
know that. I know.
exactly because of
I
coronavirus.
it,
Yesterday, he
it,
became the leader of the Labour Party, but it's overshadowed by coronavirus. But
yeah.
because he's now in that position, he said
Mm.
that he is going to put pressure on the government. He's already made a statement about how badly he thinks Boris Johnson's government has managed it. So I am
But
hopeful.
I'm going to play devil's advocate because you said there's a lot of stuff, and touching on the politics on this,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second because this virus that this whole pandemic that we're seeing, no country has the right answer for it. Every country is doing different things. And they're
Mhm.
hoping whatever they're doing is the best, and you always got to believe to some extent that they're doing what they believe is the best for the country. However, it's easy and it's always easy when people are trying things to people to point to them and say, oh, you're not doing things wrong. And it's right to some extent because we live in a democracy and it's about holding power to account. However, to some degree, I don't think that Keir Starmer or any other leaders would have done anything that we would sit down and say 100% they would have got it right because I don't think it's possible because there's too many opinions involved in terms of, oh, they're also they're also using a science which is not perfect, where they're trying to project how many people are going to be affected, how many people when the peaks are going to happen. All this science is not perfect, and we're seeing and we know that already. But the finger pointing rather than the providing solutions would thing that I just find very difficult about this is to take other politicians who are just finger pointing and not providing proper option or proper solutions that I find very difficult to say yes, Keir Starmer would have done a better job in this situation.
I don't necessarily know that he would have done a better job, but I think for me, when this first happened, we have to take into account that governments around the world have known that this is coming and they did not plan or prepare for it, even though they knew it was coming. They saw what was happening in China. They didn't take it seriously, I think is one. I do agree that to a certain extent, nobody could have planned for it very effectively because we don't know the answer. There is no vaccine, there is no medication. I agree. However, for our Prime Minister to come out and say his approach is herd immunity, that to me is the poorest communication. That is not a strategy. That you come on television and you say your approach is herd immunity and your loved one will die and we're just going to have to deal with it.
I,
For
I
me,
agree. I agree. I
I
agree.
think that it's a, it, no matter what, I don't think even I think Jeremy Corbyn is a weak leader, but he would have never communicated that message. And I think having seen Boris, like I'm not a fan of him anyway, so again, I might be biased, but for him to stand up at the start of this issue and that is his message, I just think it turned a lot of people off of him. So I think before that, people saw him as a very good leader. He's friendly, he's a bit funny, he's approachable, whatever. But in times of crisis, I do not want to hear that actually I should take my chances. All my family should go out, get struck down with coronavirus. My elderly relatives, grandmas, aunties, uncles might die, but it is what it is. For me, that was a bad message.
Oh, it
Uh,
was a bad. I agree with it. It's a bad message, and to some extent, not that's not something that anyone wanted to hear. But let's look at the actions, the things that he's put in place. He's not got anything. He's not got everything right. But I
no.
think the support, the when the Chancellor came out and then announced the support for people at work, businesses, and it sounded to me that he was trying to shape his government in a way to trying to respond to it in the best way. There is going to be an economic impact down the line, which you highlighted before. But I
Mhm.
think that there's some areas of optimism where you can say it could have been a lot worse because if you take into excuse me, if you look at other countries and how much they have put towards trying to help individuals, small business owners. I don't think they've gone to the extent. I don't think you can say they've all gone to the same extent as the chancellor did when he announced that package of measures to help out.
I agree, but I think that they did that under duress. I think that they were forced into a situation. They were cornered because you have their supporters. I guess the mainstream Daily Fail newspaper that the masses read, they put a lot of pressure on the government. And for me, I think that they responded to pressure rather than something they actually wanted to do. Because look at the response for contractors.
Mm,
They weren't really going to provide any financial support for contractors, and it was again under duress and pressure. They've now had to say, okay, for the self-employed and contractors, we are going to put X in place. But those people are still not going to get paid until June. So what
yeah,
happens to them between now and June? Um,
yeah, but
so for me, yes, I think yes, they have taken measures. Yes, they are better measures than say Donald Trump and co. But I just think that they are being very reactive and they are responding to pressure. Yes, I think there is some optimism in the fact that they finally have come out. But the thing is, when you listen to the same guy, I've forgotten his name, the chancellor. Um, he's
Rishi
talking
Sunak,
about providing so he's providing support for contractors and the self-employed, but then he's also said he then cannot justify making any amendments, I guess I don't know if that's the right language to use, but making any amendments to the IR35 policies that have now been put on hold until next year. So still next year, you can already see he's already thinking about coming down hard on contractors and the self-employed next year. So they're putting in these plasters now, but I think we have to have an eye on the future, financially and economically, what that's going to do. And we need to be prepared. And if we can save
yeah,
now, because I think the financial tsunami is
mm,
coming. And for somebody like I have my old flats.
mm,
Um, that I bought when I was at university, and I've just luckily for me, I managed to evict my tenant before I left, and that was because she hadn't been paying her rent for over 12 months.
mm,
So I managed to be able to evict her. But now you're talking about not being able to evict people. I can't go to my flat and redecorate it and put it back on the market. So I am taking that hit financially. God knows what's going to happen when I can do it up. What's the rental market going to be like? Am I going to get somebody? Am I going to get the same money? But I'm still going to be taxed in the ground because they've changed the tax structure for people who have a second property.
yeah.
Um, so those things, all of those impacts are out there, and I think they're coming.
The media focus should be on trying to make sure that we overcome or we get to a point where we're seeing that this coronavirus is behind us and that people are starting to go back to work. But right now, what people should try and focus on, especially in whilst they're at home, is start to think about how do we structure our finances so that
Mm-hmm.
we are prepared for the other impact, which is the economic impact and leading to that the potential possibilities of job losses and other things that might happen as a result of this. So it's just about now thinking ahead rather than just focusing on the media problem, because we're going to come to a point where we're no longer looking at this as a big issue as it is now, but there are going to be other issues that we need to start
Issue.
focusing on.
But to be fair, and that's at the individual level, but I think organizations also have a part to play. And to be fair, the company I work for, which I won't name, I
Mm,
think, to be fair, their response has been very good. It's
mm,
been very honest
mm,
and direct. But I think the messaging has been really good. So our CEO did like an online video conference from his own home, in
mm,
which he talked about obviously the economic impacts that are coming and what we've done. So he's already told us we get quarterly bonuses.
mm,
So there are going to be no quarterly bonuses for anyone, including managers.
mm,
Anybody that was about to start, who kind of had a contract to start with us now, has been put on hold.
mm,
Um, they have said at the moment their policy, their main focus is about people and keeping people in the business as much as we can. He said he can't guarantee that there aren't going to be redundancies down the line. But at the moment, we are trying to keep people within the company. And to do that, we're taking X, Y, Z financial measures to try and shore ourselves up. And obviously, the organization has already been through the economic recession. It was in 2018, and he said lesson learned from that was it's better to act early. So just encouraging people to take holidays. If you want to go and do voluntary work, go and do that, just to take the stress off of the company's finances. Obviously, we're in the consulting sector, so we are very dependent on what the companies we consult for are doing. So if the companies we work for are hit, then they're not going to be investing in consultancy. Luckily, to be fair, I have been busier than before. And the projects that I've been working on are still going because they're cloud projects. They're making the businesses more efficient. It means that people can work, and I'm working on HR systems and putting your payroll and your HR and your recruitment in the cloud rather than having big ERP systems. It makes it easier for companies. So they are continuing with those projects, but not everybody's in that position. But you're seeing, like, when you look at the travel industry, it's really concerning when you're seeing the British Airways and the EasyJets talking or asking the government for loans. Meanwhile, the CEO has taken 60 million from the company in dividends 10 days before coronavirus strikes. It just, I don't know, companies and their leaders also have a responsibility.
What you're saying is really interesting here, because the bit that's interesting is that companies, because they always have to plan ahead, are having these conversations at the moment, trying to think, how do we navigate them? How do we navigate ourselves through this? And how do we communicate to our employees, our staff, to just prepare them of what eventually would happen, so they can start to do their planning. And it's really good that, to listen to those messages and really understand how you can also start, because if companies are doing their planning now, those who are not doing any forward planning need to start to think about that, because the messages that you're suggesting, of ways that your company is trying to help you and trying to trying to give you that insight into the way it's thinking, it's really informative. And I think having companies that do that at this point in time, in a sensitive way, it's very important.
No, it is. To be fair, I have to say I'm really impressed by the way that the company has managed it, communicated. And even after that video conference, we got an email where he put some more detail in there on Friday, actually, before we went. He just put some more and just reiterated the key messages, and it's about people first. And sometimes the organizations say that and you don't believe them. And he's not saying people first, but nobody's going to be laid off, but it's people first. And we are trying to keep as many people who are currently working, still working. But these are the things that we are trying to do. But you can also help us by doing X, Y, and Z if it's possible. And, I manage a team, and there are people in my team who are concerned. One lady in particular is concerned because her husband is in IT but works for a travel company, and they've already taken his work down to 4 days a week instead of 5. They have recently bought a new house, so just that drop in income has an impact. So it makes her then nervous about her role, and I'm finding I'm having to reassure her that actually I don't think that your role is at risk. But it helps to have the CEO also putting out those messages. It helps for me to have kind of one-to-one conversations with the director of my part of the practice to say, this is how people in my team feel. What can you say to reassure me, so that I can go and reassure them? But yeah, I do think that companies have a role to play. And we've seen some companies that have been really insensitive on the other side of this. I think there's a particular hotel, I can't remember what it was called, that I read about. And they had a number of international people working in the hotel, and they just sent them an email saying, you are fired with immediate effect.
Wow.
And those people, they are not based in the UK. It was just so insensitive. And then when they were pulled up on it, they said, oh, it was a communication sent out in error. That sort of, somebody drafted that. somebody
mm,
reviewed it, and went out to those people. And to me, that is a case of bad man. You don't just lay off people like that. That means actually you haven't been managing your finances. How do you just quickly turn around and get rid of people so quickly?
and
Not thinking about
it's
their family, not thinking about their finances with immediate effect. And those people also were living in the hotel, so you also made them homeless.
mm. So there's a couple of things here that's coming that I'm saying. It's that there is a crisis at the moment, and then at the moment, and the government is out there communicating what it's trying to do to manage that and trying to help people overcome to come to a point where we're in a good place. There's another conversation underlining that is what how companies are responding to that, what they're seeing, and and just how they communicate to staff. And I think there's another layer here is that how do people who work for companies who are self-employed respond to what they're hearing from the government and what they're hearing from their companies. And
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is that ultimately it's about, like you said, your company is about people. People
Mm-hmm.
now need to start thinking about not just the coronavirus, but start thinking about how they're going, where, how they position themselves going forward, so they are in a place where they can, the impact of this is not as big as it could be if they're not planning ahead. That's what I'm kind of getting from this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I think people have to plan ahead. Um,
Uh, so
and also it might be you might get to the case where you might have to look at other industries in the interim and look at the organizations that are doing massive employment drives, the supermarkets, and it might not be something that you would ordinarily think of.
mm,
But if you are stuck, maybe it's about considering going and working for one of the large supermarkets, or
mm,
becoming a delivery driver as
mm.
an interim measure, because to me, that's where there is employment at the moment.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because what you're saying now is that is what can you do right now
Yeah,
to ensure that you've got some income coming in this period of time, so that when the hard times come, at least you're better placed to sustain yourself. Yeah, and I do wonder whether the fallout from this is going to be that people now need to start thinking the importance of having a side hustle, where you're not focusing on where you're not focusing all your attention on every on the job that you have, but having something there to actually help you through when it's difficult times. Because now with working at home, I'm not suggesting that everyone does this, but working at home and stuff, I think that actually the less travel time you have. The less time you're spending on travel is time that you can put energy into some other passions that possibly could be the thing that helps you through those difficult times.
I absolutely agree. And I think the side hustle thing has been going around for a long time, but I think now it
Mm,
just reinforces the fact that everybody really needs a side hustle
mm,
of some sort. But I think it is very easy to say, and even myself, I keep telling myself I need a side hustle, and I have worked on side hustles to a certain extent, but I think I have become too comfortable.
mhm, mhm.
Um, and I think that is a problem for me.
Yeah,
Uh, I think I have become comfortable in my job and
mm,
having my salary, but actually I need to push more on the
yeah,
side hustle. Maybe it's another topic for another day, but
yeah,
um, yeah, how do you develop your side hustle when you're really
yeah.
relaxed?
Yeah. When you're comfortable.
When you're too comfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do agree. I think it is the time to look at your skills and your expertise and see how you could turn that into a side hustle so that you have got some income coming in from somewhere else.
Mm. So what are you, so take for example now, what are you, you got people working for you, you got projects down the line, and potentially these projects will sustain you, hopefully those projects will sustain you throughout the challenge times that may come going forward. But how are you also preparing for um how are you preparing to navigate your way around this? What sort of things are you thinking about now that are going to say, okay, I know that this is potentially going to happen. Now, this is what I'm putting plan, because you talked about the flat that you have now, and and the potential impact that the government is going to put some more stringent measures to
Yeah.
generate more tax from you.
Yeah.
What are you looking to do?
So what I might say, to be fair, my short-term plan for my other property is really to, as soon as I can get out, go out and do up the flat, but do it up myself so that I don't have or do as much as I can myself, I would say, so that I don't have the additional cost of having to pay for lots of workers to come and do it up. And then probably rent it out if I can for another 12 months. I
Mm,
can currently cover it, but I want to rent it out for another 12 months and then reassess whether I want to keep it or sell it. Ideally, I would
mm,
like to keep it, but if the financial burden becomes too much, if I can't get it rented out,
mm,
then I think I would have to take the decision to sell it. I think there's quite a lot of equity there. So, and then it would be about how I invest that money so it's not just burning a hole in my pocket and I don't just waste it. But to be fair, the flat is there because I don't have a pension. So
mm, mm,
the idea was that the income would eventually become a pension, but obviously sometimes you need to reassess. So I think that's what I was planning to do with the property for now.
mm,
In terms of personal finances, I think I'm relatively confident that my role is okay. Luckily, as you said, being at home and everybody being at home, it's had some benefits. Obviously, my 4-year-old son was in nursery. The nursery shut, so it's instantly a saving of £850 a month.
mhm,
So, but that is now being
mhm,
taken up, having to pay for the rent on the flat.
mm,
But not having that additional cost means that there is some saving there. So that's a benefit. And then he starts school in September.
mm,
So ideally, I would have the flat re-rented out and not have that the nursery fee. So that's like £1,600 a month. That is
mm,
not an outgoing anymore. So I think financially that would take away a lot of burden. And then in terms, I've had lots of thoughts actually. The other thing was in terms of the side hustle. So for a long time, I have been doing career coaching on and off.
mm,
But it's kind of been word of mouth. It's not something I've necessarily advertised. I set up a website, it's now disappeared.
mm.
So really, I need to think about getting that back up and running
Okay.
properly.
What's
The
the name
proper
of the website? In this case.
career management solutions.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, go on.
So really working with people to coach them on how to get ahead in their careers and really focusing on kind of graduates or middle to career starters or middle management type people, because I find that, so from what I've seen, there's a lot of career coaching for people at the
Mm,
top of the ladder, and they're
mhm,
paying hundreds or sometimes thousands of pounds to career coaches and getting their CVs done
mm,
professionally. But there are people, and the people that I've worked with, who are just starting out or who are at the middle of their career, they may not know about career coaching or they've not considered it, or they've done their CVs themselves. And there's a lot of people that I've worked with who have brought their CV to me, are stuck in a role, they're not getting the salary that they earn. And it's really just having a conversation, building their confidence. There's a lady that I was working with, um, a Greek lady actually, and she was stuck in a job. She absolutely hated it, couldn't get promoted. And like when I saw her CV, which she told me about what she does, and then when I saw her CV, it was not a reflection of what she told me. So
mhm,
just by changing around her CV, talking to her about actually, from what you're telling me,
mm,
actually, that's not what's reflected on the paper. So let's update your LinkedIn, let's update your CV. And just from doing that, she moved to another organization and got a £20,000 pay rise.
oh wow,
Um,
okay.
so,
Mm,
like I've had quite a few success stories, but again, in my being comfortable, like when I've ticked off certain things, I've bought my house,
mm,
I've got the job, I've kind of got the career, and my kids are in school. Like it's that comfortableness that has made me not really push forward on that,
yeah.
and I need to stop comfortable effectively. So I think there is that I need to work on.
The way you help people in terms
Hmm.
of developing their career is very essential, and it's probably very valuable at the point where we're going to, it looks like, and I'm not going to say this is going to happen for sure because you never know, there might be a miracle down the line, that there's going to be a lot of people who lose their jobs. It's at this time that people like yourself need to be heard, so that you can try and help people to really look at how do they come out of that situation? How do they develop
Absolutely.
their careers after experiencing this negative impact of what potentially might be a recession or a loss of
So
loss?
yeah, and it's also, I think, sometimes looking at it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, because I think we tend to focus, oh my gosh, it's going to be an economic disaster. It's health wise, it's a disaster, but it's also an opportunity because you have time now that you didn't have before. Like, I'm not on the school run,
Mm,
like 3 or 4 times a day. I don't have to drive my children to 25 million after school clubs. I've got more time. I can read. I can sit down and start developing a website. And I think we all actually need to look at this as an opportunity. It's also time to value time that, like, people. How long since I've spoken to you? Do
yeah, yeah,
you know, we actually
yeah,
have time. Like my friends, we're
yeah.
all dispersed. My uni girls, we try and meet maybe once or twice a year. Now we're planning a fortnightly catch up on Zoom. We did it yesterday. So
Yeah.
it's just it's actually an opportunity now, and it's a time when you can actually see and value your family, value your friends, and
Mm.
actually start looking at what else could I do? Because actually, sometimes it's quite nice to work from home.
And one of the things you touched upon is reaching out to people at this point in time, people you never had the opportunity because you have no excuse. You got a lot of time to yourself at the moment. You can watch, you can spend that time exercising, doing Netflix, but you still got some time tied away. So just reaching out to people, reaching out to your family,
Yeah,
making sure everybody's safe, but also start to thinking about the future. What is it you're going to start? What is it that's going to happen? How are you going to manage that? Who do you reach out to for advice and information? Because right now everybody's focusing on mainly
exactly.
Corona, but actually start focusing on the opportunities that are going to be that are probably presented to you right now or in the future.
Now, I don't know. A couple of things cut out for me there at the end.
Yeah, it's now it's just really talking about the opportunities that are happen that people should maybe start to
Yeah.
focus on the opportunities, not just focus on
Mm.
Corona, but focus on opportunities that are coming down the line
Yeah.
or are available right now. Like you said,
Mhm.
reading more material, reaching out to people that they've never reached out to, who might be able to offer advice and information, things like that. Because online there's a heap of information, knowledge that you can utilize, but it's just about reaching out to finding the right information and right that you can utilize going forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Just a couple of things that I want to go back on. You're talking about the impact that's coming down the line. For
Mhm.
you, what would be your like top five things that you say that these are the things that people need to start thinking about now as opportunities, with the view that there's a potential tsunami of some type that's coming down the line.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the top five things that you can think about. Um, so I think one is, and they're not in order of priority, but just in order of how I'm thinking of them. So I think the top five is, one is look at this as um, an opportunity in terms of how you manage your time. The amount of time that you currently spend traveling, could you spend more time at home, more time with your family? Is there something that you could do differently in your job going forward, when everything goes back to normal? Should you still be working in the same way, or should you be looking to do something differently? I think it's an opportunity to sit down and assess and review your finances and the way you manage your finances. I think now some people will be making savings, but some people who are in particular industries, it may be tight for them. I think now is an opportunity to review your finances and think about where you need to maybe tighten your belt or where you need to increase your savings, so that you are, what we say in consulting, future proofing for when the tsunami of potentially economic difficulty is upon us. I think there is an opportunity, as we've already said, to look at a side hustle.
Mm.
If there is something that you have always wanted to do, now is probably the time to start looking into how you can start developing that business opportunity online or otherwise. It's also probably an opportunity for you to start training and developing yourself further. There's so many organizations now who are offering free online training for the time in which we are in isolation and certification. So I think there is a real opportunity for you to get out and develop yourself right now,
Hmm.
and start to look to develop skills in areas that you might want to move into. So I think now is the time to start doing that. And I think lastly, I think it's an opportunity to become more spiritually and mentally focused, if you see what I mean. I
What do
think
you mean?
it's
Expand on that.
so I think now is a time when you kind of you're forced into downtime. I think we're always moving, we're always rushing around, we're worrying about money, we're worrying about travel, we're doing all of these things. But now is actually a time for calm. It's a
Mm,
time to sit down and reflect, not focusing on work, but thinking about just getting your equilibrium, getting your balance, getting your daily exercise, thinking about what you're eating, sleeping properly, having some relaxation time, spending time with family and friends. I think it's giving us an opportunity. It's almost like um, I think if you're religious or if you're spiritual, it's a time when the universe is saying it's time to take stock and think about what's actually important. It's
mm,
time to just mentally have. I think we're constantly thinking. I think we have seen a lot of mental health issues
mhm,
recently.
mhm,
A lot of mental health, a lot of suicide. I think it's as a result of this really fast-paced environment in which we live. We're constantly moving, constantly traveling, and we're talking about having a side hustle. But on another note, I think sometimes there are people are putting a lot of pressure on themselves to be everything, to be all things at once, if you see what I mean. So you've got the job, you've got 10 side hustles, and you're exercising and you're doing this and you're doing that, and you're moving at such a pace
mhm,
that you don't have time to just relax and just maybe read a book. Just don't do anything. Sit down,
mhm,
go for a jog, just
mhm.
just let your mind be free. I don't know if that makes sense, but just I think there's
To me,
that.
what was coming
There's
across by when you're explaining is about taking care of yourself, investing in yourself as a person, you know,
Mhm.
rather than worry about the external factors like, having to get a job or,
Yeah.
all the other things that we focus too much attention. Is just taking time out for yourself and investing in yourself. One of the things that comes away that I take away from that, if I'm right in what you're saying, if I've understood what you're saying, is that I always say that, you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of other things. If you're not in a good place, there's no way you're going to be able to manage all the issues that are coming, or all the problems, or the challenges, or take advantage of opportunities that come down the line. So it's always important to make sure that you're in a good place before you take
Yep.
on the rest.
Yep, I agree. I think that's the thing. So I think those are my things, but I think that spiritual, religious, I don't know, getting in touch if you're not religious, just spiritual, or just as you say, taking care of yourself at
I,
this
I
time, and taking time to just take stock, take time to read a book. I used to love reading. I haven't read a book apart from reading with my son.
mm,
So, I don't really have a chance to read, but now I've got so many books that I've kind of half started that hopefully I'll have time to actually go through and finish.
as a parent, what sort of advice, or looking at it from a parent perspective, because a lot of people were going to say, okay, it's fine for you to say that if you're living by yourself and you've not, you got not got kids around, but there are some people who have children, they have to take care of their children. It's very hard for them to have time to themselves. What sort of things are you doing to make sure that you do make time for yourself? And
To be honest, like I get up. To be fair, I always do anyway. I get up early and I exercise. I
okay.
always make sure I get up early and I exercise. So before my household wakes up, I will try and do some form of exercise. I will try and get on top of certain things before everyone wakes up. So I might be washing clothes or cooking or doing whatever it is that's going to mean that later in the day I have that time for myself, and I'm not just getting to 8 o'clock, putting the kids to bed, and then so knackered that I just fall asleep.
Mm,
So yeah, so I think to be honest, and I think even as a parent, you have to always have routine. So I'm a very structured person by nature, so it might not work for everybody. I know that everybody is not structured. Everybody is not in a two-parent family or home, so it can be more difficult. I think, to be fair, I am lucky, so my other half can help.
Mm.
But I am very structured. I get up and at 6:30, and I will exercise, and I will sort certain things out so that when my children get up, I'm not worried about those things. And then later in the day, I've got more time for myself, so that I kind of have that morning time to myself.
Mm.
And then I have a structure for my children, which they hate. My son wants to go back to school because homeschool is worse than going to school, he tells me.
Yeah.
Um, but I think he is at an age where my eldest son is at an age where he's going to be going to secondary school.
Mm.
Um, and he will be sitting his 11 plus next September.
Mm.
And so for me, it is very important that he continues to have a structure at home. Just
Mhm.
because you're at home, you're not going to be playing what console he's got, I can't remember, something,
Or video
Nintendo
games
Switch.
or
You're not going
yeah.
to be playing Nintendo Switch all day or watching TV or lying in your bed all day. We are
Yeah.
going to be operating like it's school. You will be getting up and you'll have your shower and you will do some exercise and you will go through your school day as if you were at school.
Yeah.
So again, I try to ensure, and my younger one, he's 4, so it's less structured in that sense, but I'm still trying to give him activities to prepare him for school because he starts in September. But again, that's me. Again, I was speaking to 5 of my friends yesterday who all have children,
Mm.
and we're we're all at different places. So some are a
Mm.
bit more relaxed. Um, and even my friend, one of his friends emailed him to say, I've been playing PlayStation all day. Doesn't really help my cause. But and I suppose it depends on, I don't want to put judgment on other parents because other people will probably think that I'm too strict, but I just
Mm.
feel like um, the kids need to continue to have the discipline as if they were still going to school, because I think otherwise it will make it harder for them when they do go back to school.
Yeah.
And I think it's just doubly important because I am keen for my son to do the 11 plus, that he continues to develop the skills and expertise that he's going to need to get through that exam. So
Mm. So
um, it's about
you're
structure.
yeah, I mean that's the key thing because it sounds like you have structure for yourself and you have structures for your son, and it varies between the ages because of where they are. What is also interesting is that you mentioned about homeschooling. How do you
Mm-hmm.
find in dealing with the homework and stuff like that? Is it is it
Well,
take?
to be fair, it was difficult in the beginning, but to be fair, I think it's an opportunity and it's an eye opener
Mm.
because it has opened up to me. It has shown me where my son is struggling. It
Mhm.
has shown me in detail where I need to help him develop. So obviously, when he comes home from school, I will help him with his homework. But this is different. This is looking
Mm.
at the work that his teacher would typically set and see how he approaches that.
Mhm.
And it has been an eye opener to see that there are things that he is struggling with, which then explain that I knew that he's very good at maths and science and technology, but when it
Mm.
comes to he's very good literacy and reading and articulating himself, but putting things on paper he has struggled with.
Mhm.
And by doing the homeschooling and going through with him the work that the teacher has set, I've been able to identify and see where the issues are and be able to help him to be able to build the skills that he needs. So for me,
Mm.
it's been an eye opener. It's been really positive because I think he will go back to school with more confidence because I've been able to help. When a teacher has a classroom of 30 people, she can
Mm.
say he struggles with something, but doesn't necessarily have the time to fully focus and develop him
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
those areas. And so he's getting more one-to-one attention, so I think that's good. In addition to that, he had started in February, I think, doing 11 plus tuition.
Mm.
So it was a face-to-face tuition that he had started, and that guy has now moved to online tuition. And
Mhm.
again, that's really positive because he's still kind of having an interaction with a teacher. And 2 or 3 people, one of the people is actually in his class at school, and they're very good friends. So he's still kind of having interaction with a teacher and being
Mm.
set work that's a bit more challenging, and again, still being able to prepare him. But again, I think he's privileged It's not everybody that can still, like, I've got other friends whose kids are in tuition, but they haven't yet got that capability to do online tuition.
Understood. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think again, I have to be grateful, but again, I think it's it's an eye opener. But again, speaking to one of my friends, she was quite concerned to find that I think the school had said that only 15% of her daughter's class, she's in secondary school, had been logging in to the homework.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, there are people that are not taking this thing seriously. And I guess it comes down to you as a parent and what you value, again, not wanting to judge other parents and their approach. And obviously it's harder for people who are key workers and have to go out to work.
Mm.
That's a different, but I guess their kids can still go to school, but I guess school's not necessarily putting on a normal school curriculum for those children.
There's so many different layers to this, levels to this, and like I think the most important message from all this is that it's not about passing judgment. Is that just to show there's a different way of approaching things, and you have your way of approaching things. And I always look at it like this: is it's not only one method to get to an answer. You just got to
Yeah.
find your find a way that fits with with the way your lifestyle, and and take away from bits that you think, yeah, I can apply that to my lifestyle. And
Yeah.
from what you're saying here, it's almost encouraging, because from all this, not almost encouraging, it is actually encouraging to say that yes, we're going through a crisis, but actually there are opportunities here. And one of the biggest opportunities here is that I've spent time with my son, and I've learned where he's weak, where he has weaknesses, and I've tried to help him develop it. I mean, that's a very positive message
Yeah,
from all
absolutely.
this, which is good,
Mhm.
which is good to hear. Is there anything else that you think is important?
To be fair, I think other things that I'm doing probably with my children, with my family. So we're out gardening together. We are like, they've got a lot of, there's just so many more things online now. So for my little son who's 4, his nursery shared a link for this online yoga thing for
Mm,
kids. So
mm,
I've been doing that with my little one, and it's really good fun. And he does it at nursery. And to be fair, again, you're just learning things that the kids. So I'm sitting down with my son, and he's going namaste. I'm like, you're 4 years old, but and it's like proper yoga, but for little ones, but just
yeah,
doing the yoga with them. And then for the older one, there's PE Joe, which you probably heard about. This guy has
yeah.
now got a million subscribers, and but again, it's really fun. So
Mm,
just doing more online things. And then I'm on groups with mums at school, and they've been sharing a link. What was it? So like you can go online and do a virtual museum with the kids.
mhm,
um, just going online and going and doing virtual museums. And actually from a work perspective, actually, and probably going on to the topic we may be talking about in future in terms
mm,
of like developing as a leader.
mm,
So I currently manage a team for a specific area, but actually this morning I woke up and I thought, actually, I want to grow the team and develop the team in a particular area. And I just, as I was out jogging today, I just started to really think about it. And actually, I've got my performance review coming up this week. So I thought actually now is a good opportunity for me to raise it for the director that I work for, because I think
mm,
there is downtime, and I think there is an opportunity to develop and grow my team. And obviously everybody's now an expert in a particular area, and to start kind of building the profile of my team as experts in this area that I've started looking at. So
mm.
um, I think it's also been a time for me to just reflect on my own professional development, and also the development of my team and the way forward. But we're working with cloud technology, which is the future, and we're just starting out as a team, and we're just learning the technology. But it just struck me that there is an opportunity for us to make this thing a bigger thing. So yeah, I will be approaching my director about that this week
Oh, that's
coming.
fantastic.
Hmm.
Mel, could you let's talk a little bit about how we know each other. We started this station, and we were trying to figure out a topic, and as we've gone through the station, I just think that it's so much really good information for people, to people to listen to, and be really optimistic about, because it's not just about the doom and gloom, but the things that you could be doing. Really good messages about things that people can take on and people can start thinking about now. But it just give people context of how we know each other. So do you want to describe your experience and I'll describe mine?
Okay, so obviously we met when I joined. Where did I met you at Havering Sixth Form College? I
Yeah.
think was that probably over 20 years ago now. Can you believe it?
I'm like, let's forgive our
So
ages. We don't have to give people.
we met at Havering Sixth Form College. I think
Yeah.
you were a year ahead of me.
Yeah.
So I had joined from an all-girls school.
Mhm.
I had grown up in Essex, and I met you guys who'd come down from Beckton. Um,
Oh God.
but you took me into your fold. So we used to obviously hang out upstairs in the upper atrium. So I
I,
hang out, I think,
I
for
hate with
the
six
same
foot.
kids. Yeah. And then we used to go out and have lunches. And I think there was a point where people used to just come round to my house while my mum was out.
Oh yeah. I remember there was an invitation. We just did we didn't get
Yeah,
crashed.
they just used to come round and just chat and hang
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And then I think you guys all left to go to uni. I
Mm.
think we all kept in touch, but I think there was probably a point where we haven't kept in touch, and then we've come back full circle.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It's a couple. There's a couple of things that I remember about that experience about Havering. You were always the person who was very outspoken, but clearly very intelligent. You also, and I think that's what I appreciate. I think one of the things I appreciate about a lot of people, one of the things that qualities I've always liked someone who's honest and not afraid of who they are. You came across as someone who was very confident, not just in the things that you said but in the way also you carried yourself. So that's one of the things I picked up. And then over the period of time, like you said, we know we came to your place for dinner with your family. So you're very open about your family. I think I attended a birthday party with your friends as well. So your friends and family and the things I got around, you're very family orientated person as well. Not only were you just intelligent, um, spoke your mind, but you also focused on the importance of family. So that's the thing I appreciate. And we have a common friend, Phil, who we've known for a long time. So that was my experience. I think one of the things I found about you, you could be very hard, but you were very, you were very
yes,
you could be very harsh, but you were fair
yeah,
in your assessment of things. So yeah, that's how we know each other from back in college.
yes. I think that's a fair assessment. I get that a lot. I can be quite direct. I think is the feedback I've had.
Yeah, I mean
But
that's very positive
yeah,
because I think you in your assessment because I think it's always good to have a circle of people around you give you different perspective. You might not always want to hear it, and I'm not saying that everybody likes this, but for me that works really well. I might not like to hear everything that person might be telling me, but I
yeah,
will really appreciate it because I know that's their honest point of view. I don't have to second guess. They're not trying to tell me something, but they mean something else. This is what they mean. So you can always take that into your consideration at all times, which is much appreciated.
yeah. No, I think it's good, but I think the thing that I've learned over time is you also have to have some emotional intelligence. It's not everybody that
Mm.
can take a direct message, so sometimes I have to temper
Yeah, your message.
that I'm going to deliver a message. I think that's something that has come over time.
Yeah. One thing I just want to touch upon is how do people get hold of you if they want to talk to you in terms of your social media or stuff like that? Or is it something that you're looking to do down the line?
It's something that I'm looking to develop. So yes,
Uh,
this is my motivation to actually get myself up and running properly on
mm,
social media because I
uh,
haven't. To be honest, I'm on LinkedIn. You can add me on LinkedIn,
mm,
Melissa Bellucci. But over and above that, I'm not really socially active. And actually, it's one of my performance management goals. Actually, and it's again something that I need to talk about in my professional life, but also in
mm,
my personal wanting to have a side hustle life. It's something that I
mm.
really need to look at and start developing.
Okay. Just also in terms of other topics because of like I said, it's always worth reaching out to people like yourself and having these conversations on a regular basis because I think you had lots of value and you have lots of there's more to come. That's why I say there's a whole heap of stuff to come from your point of view. Um, just thinking down the line is just to say that I think for me having this conversation was really, really valuable. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate that, and I look forward really to having more of these type of conversation with you. I'm not just saying that just because. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you
Thank
would
you
like
for
to say?
having me. I've also enjoyed it, and I've actually taken away some actions and goals for myself, actually, because actually
Mm,
speaking to you has also opened my eyes to other things as well that I need to be doing, and I think it's been good to actually articulate those things.
yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's been really positive for me, and hopefully you'll have me back again soon.
Mel, there's no question that's going to happen. I'm very excited about these conversations. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So
I'm
yeah,
glad.
absolutely, absolutely.